move that over.
Okay, it's top of the hour, so we will start. Good morning, good afternoon, good night to everyone attending MEC conference. My name is Martina Grom, and I'm happy to present here. It's my second MEC conference. My first one was in Austin, Texas, which I would love to be, but currently we are still in remote work, but I think we will see each other soon on one or the other conference. Today, I'm here with my colleague, Toni Pohl, and let me just introduce myself a little bit. I'm a Microsoft 365 and Azure MVP. I work with Microsoft 365 services since 2008. So imagine I started with cloud services 2 years before the iPhone was launched. So, and I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director. We have our own company, which is located in Vienna, Austria. And I'm happy to introduce my colleague, Toni.
Hello from my side. My name is Toni Pohl. I'm an IT consultant, similar like Martina. I'm doing projects mostly related to Microsoft 365 based on Microsoft Azure. And I'm happy to present this session together with Martina.
And I'm really happy. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself. We will look at the chat briefly, but we have a session with a lot of demos. And if you need to know something, just unmute yourself, and we are happy to answer all questions. So first of all, we got the question about, can you do a development session for Microsoft Outlook and Microsoft Exchange, and how you can do that? And the main part, or the first idea which came to my mind, is we can use a session around actionable messages within Microsoft 365. Why is that? Because we can use those messages in an interactive flow, and the message flow is like that, regardless if it's Outlook, if it's Teams, or if it's SharePoint, you can perform a specific engagement without leaving your inbox or your Teams client or your SharePoint site or your mobile device. And if we look at that, and what we can do here is, I provided a couple of examples, what we can do with actionable messages. You see here, you get an email, and then you said, okay, I want to add 3 members to my Microsoft 365 group. And you can directly select those members out of Outlook, approve them, and then add them to your Microsoft 365 group or to your Microsoft team. And that also means it's not the tool which is relevant anymore. It's more like the message is where you are currently working. So it could work the same way in other tools as well, like in Teams or in SharePoint.
And it's part of a business process.
And it's part of a business process. So we are not looking at Exchange only, we are also looking at other services. For those who know me, know also that I'm a big Yammer fan. And what we've seen here, Yammer was one of the first services who provided kind of messages, interactive messages within Outlook. So that means this is a screenshot from one of my demo tenants, where you see I get my Yammer notification, what is new in one of the communities which I'm engaged in, and I can directly in Outlook make a like or post something or get an answer or share that. So I do not have to move over from Outlook into my Yammer app or into my communities app. I simply go within Outlook and click on everything I do. And this is kind of the principle of actionable messages. We do not have that specific example, because if you want to go that far as the Yammer team went with those kind of messages, it's a little bit effort to program those examples.
But it's a nice demo.
It's a very nice demo. Also, what we thought about is, what are the use cases for those? And you can think about, you can use those kind of messages within your Microsoft Viva environment. So everyone nowadays talks about Viva connections, employee experience, and so on. But think about in that way that you see, okay, I have a message, I have to post it, and I post it into a Teams channel. Or I have an employee experience app with Viva connections, and I have the same notification within Viva. Or I do not have SharePoint at all. I have a third-party intranet or whatever, but I still want a good frontline worker experience, and I post the messages in Outlook. So you see, we have different ways. And also we talked about that briefly. We can also use that for third-party services. So for instance, if you're looking into Slack or other services, it could also work that way.
So there are some other vendors who also support actionable messages. Some of them translate them into their own language, into their own experience, but there are a lot of clients who understand actionable messages. And we will see that here with these demos here.
So, and the first we want to show you here is a Viva Connections dashboard. The Viva Connections dashboard provides you an employee experience app which you can use on your mobile device or which you can use within your intranet and so on. And what we see here is we provided a message card right here with different options where you can select the menu you want to choose and so on. So this is one of the ways you can do that. One of the
important business cases in our Viva Connections app. So here we clicked on the today's lunch message here and get that experience that we can select the lunch for today. In that case, we have 3 options.
Yeah, and you see we are from Austria, so schnitzel is very important, but we also have vegan options here. The same could be true within Microsoft Teams. And you see here, you can simply provide a message card within Microsoft Teams and let the same menu selection be valid within Microsoft Teams. But consider you are probably an organization which is only on Exchange Online or is very email focused and have everything done within email. Then you can do the same with an adaptive card which provides the same information and the same selection within Outlook, where you can see, okay, those are my lunch options for today, and I can simply select them and choose what I want for lunch today or for dinner.
The benefit here is that it's actually the same card we send to different clients, but there are some small adaptations we need to do. For example, you could see that when we posted it to the Viva Connections app, we had option buttons. Here we have buttons. So there are some small differences, but basically it's the same card.
Exactly.
And it renders perfectly for the relevant client, depending on if it's Outlook or Viva or Teams.
Yeah. So if we look at that, and I just want to provide you a small demo, what we did here, and then we go a little bit deeper, how you can provide more content in the card and so on. So first of all, I will show you how we can start that kind of information.
We just switched to the other browser. We are using a demo tenant here.
Yes.
Which is in our Edge browser. So simply go to the Edge browser.
So where is it?
I think it's here.
Yeah. Again. So here we are. So first of all, what you see here is I'm currently in my SharePoint intranet, and I have a dashboard here in place, which is my Viva Connections dashboard. And here I have specific adaptive cards. So you see here, if I go to order, I see my beautiful lunch options card for today. But how did I do that? And just to show you how we can configure that, I go here into Viva Connections, I open up my dashboard, and here I see all icons and all items I can add to my client. Simply first step, go to edit. Here you see my options, and here I have also my lunch menu. So what can I do from here? For instance, I can simply go there and just do it with that kind of example. I have here an edit card option, and you see here you have different types of cards. So you can set my card has a large or a medium size. I can choose between different templates, so I can choose between heading, image, description, and so on. So I can choose the layout. Then I have here my Coffee Vienna, the title of the card. You can also see you can choose between a specific icon or a custom image. Depends what you want to choose. And also you see here, this is today's menu. How does the card look like? Just to show you that, if I click on the card, you see here, this is a beautiful card with a lot more menu options than I had before. So I'm going back to that preview, go to edit, and here you see all what I'm doing here with the card is I can say, what is the card action? So when I click on the card or I click on the button, I get a quick view. And the quick view is simply a JSON, which is right here. Because I'm not a developer, that I can simply edit JSON files in a small window like I have here. But what I can do, I can use Adaptive Cards IO and copy the whole content here into my Adaptive Card Designer. So where is it?
That's the next step.
Here is my Adaptive Card IO sample folder, and I can go here to Designer. So what happens here? It starts with a very simple adaptive card. And I'm just selecting here and I'm posting my content of my adaptive card in here. And then you see you have the beautiful card exactly in the same framework you have here. The beauty of that is you have here a selection of different host apps. So you see, you can use it in a bot framework. You can use it as Outlook actionable message. And then you see the card design is changing because we are now providing different client types we have here. Or you can say, okay, I want to have it as Viva Connections card like we had it before. Or last time could be, we can go into another bot framework or into Cortana skills. So you see you have a lot of options what you can do here. And if I look here, I can simply go and change the text and can say Austin cuisine and so on. So you see we have an immediately feedback and can change the card and copy it back to another space.
So that's the nature of the adaptive cards, and actionable messages are a part of it, which means the difference is that an adaptive card just shows content and an actionable message gives me a choice. What we saw with the menu. So for example, I can select, I want to have menu 1, 2, or 3 for lunch or similar processes. It can be an approval process, it can be something different, but it really depends on the business, on the use case.
Yeah, exactly. And when I have finished all my adaptations here in the Adaptive Card Designer, I can simply go copy it and fill it back into my Adaptive Card Designer, copy it here, and then I have the new card right over here, and I can go into preview. And if I haven't done anything wrong, you will see here we have simply changed the text of the message and so on.
So this is a static card. Developers, of course, can adapt this card here dynamically and provide dynamic content like coming from a database, from a backend system or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's the same principle.
Exactly. And the last part of the demo here is, this is the Adaptive Card Designer. What you can also do here is you can go to the other dashboard. Let me just switch back to the presentation. You can also go to the message card playground. And here you see a couple of examples where you can use the same style of card. So message card playground does the same, but the beauty here is you have also third-party services. And you see if you're using Trello or anything else, you can simply select those samples here and look, for instance, a ServiceNow approval, how does it look like, and so on. And also what you can do here is you can simply send those cards via email to your tenant to check how the card will look like and so on. And you see, here it is. And here you see, this is my message card playground text. And after I have developed that, I can test it to approve and reject it and so on. So you see, we have a lot of messages here. On the other side, and this is the last part, what I wanted to show you here, here we are directly in message card playground. What you can also do, there's a new tool in place, which is the Actionable Message Designer. And what you see here, those are the examples which are pre-built. And this is also one of the recommendations I would have for you here is if you want to try out message cards and also actionable messages, start with the playground, look at it, and you can also copy it. Again, what you see here, this is what I showed you in the screenshot. What I can do here in theory, I can go here, copy that JSON file and say, okay, this is cool. I want the same in my Viva Connections dashboard. And how can I do that? I opened up the sample, I copied the schema, I go into the dashboard. I'm here in edit mode. I add a new card, go into card designer. And what I'm doing here is with adding, I can set, okay, this is the card size, the icon, yada, yada. What we have here, we show the quick view, and I'm just copying my JSON file here, go into preview, and if everything went right, it should open up my card. And you see, it's quite simple. It's not that simple, but it's a good start if you are new to that and if you see what can we do here and how we can implement those kind of cards. So what have you seen here? We looked at how we can integrate adaptive cards. How can we have the same experience that we have in Viva Connections, also in Outlook, how we can use the templates, and then we will also move on to our next slide. So let me check where it is. It's here. And that means please try it out, use the samples and so on. And also please be aware about some of the requirements and restrictions you have here with your actionable messages.
Mm-hmm. So that's a very nice demo Martina showed, just to get a little bit familiar with adaptive card and actionable messages. I just want to go back to this slide here just to point out from a technical perspective, there are some versions out of adaptive cards available, and not every client understands every version of adaptive card. As you can see here in the screenshot on the right side, you see adaptive card version 1.4 plus, for example. And from a technical side, if we send an email, we will see this in the next demo here or in the next demos. We have to take care that the adaptive card is part of the header of the email, which means it must be an HTML email, and we need to embed the adaptive card, the actionable message, in a script tag so that the client understands it and can render it. And depending on the client, we have to take care of the version of the adaptive card. Okay, with that, how can we send such adaptive cards? We have seen it in Viva Connections in the designer. How can we use it from our own business processes? First, we have Office connectors, and I want to show you that quickly. Office connectors are one method to send an adaptive card, but the thing is, the Office connectors only support the message card formats, which is the older format, which is not recommended to use for new business cases. But I just want to show you the difference for that. So what we will see now, we will look at the inbox connector, and then we will see how we can send such a card via email. So how does this look like? I go to my browser here, and this is a mailbox of my demo account here. And here I have a group, it's called Mac group. And if I go to the properties here, to the settings of that Office or Microsoft 365 group, we see the connectors here on the right side. So I can click on connectors, and here I can add incoming connectors. In my case, I've already configured one. you can see there are connectors for various systems. So I have added the incoming webhook connector here. So it's already here. And what does it give me? Well, it gives me an HTTP endpoint, which is this one here, TPE5 webhook something, and it has a name. So this means with that URL, I can post my message to such a group. So I have a demo. I just want to show it to you with Postman. How can I send such a message card to this group here? Again, this is the legacy card format, which means it looks a little bit different. And I've opened that here, I think, in my browser. Let me wait for Postman to open here. And I have this webhook URL, and this here ends with, let's see, okay, I have to scroll to the right side. So that's the URL. Everyone, there's no authentication behind that incoming webhook. So everyone with that URL can send such a card to that group here. So my Postman is already open, hopefully. So there's my collection. So here's my adaptive cards. And here's my incoming webhook. And you can see the type of that card is a message card. And then I simply copied one of the samples from the designers. So this is the webhook I'm currently using. It ends with 9C8. So I sent a HTTP post with that JSON content. That's the only thing which I needed to add. The content type is application adaptive card plus JSON, and the body includes the card. So I sent that to my group. I just get back a 1. And if I look back in my group here, let's go here, we should see that we just now got this incoming webhook, this adaptive card here, which looks like here. And you see also the message card has a similar functionality. I have interactive elements here, like a button which I can open, close, or set a due date. So for example, I can go here and get a calendar item and so on. And then I would click save. If I do it now, nothing is listening to that endpoint that's configured in that card. So now I will get an error message which says, hey, I cannot post the content, what has been selected from that card, to some endpoint who does something with the data. But this is the simplest way how you can use it. The next part is, if I find my presentation here. So I've been here. We have seen that. This is how you can configure such a connector for a group. We have some requirements for sending adaptive cards. So you can see we have a list here with the URL counts and the linked lists later. There you can see what client supports what actionable message card. And you can see if you're working with an old Office Professional Plus here, adaptive cards, for example, not supported, but actionable messages in a specific version are supported. So this is important for your organization to take care that the adaptive card, the actionable message is rendered correctly.
Yeah, and also be aware that it's an evergreening service. So we called it kind of legacy because it's not supported anymore. So it's always a good idea to stay current and to stay in an updated version. The other thing is what we need to talk about is security. So the security requirements for your actionable messages in Microsoft 365 is, first of all, you need a sender verification enablement. The service must be registered with Microsoft. Your action all must support HTTPS. We do not do HTTP anymore. And also you have to verify the tokens, and you also need a limited purpose token from the service as part of the URL you are using. So always keep that in mind. Also, if you send them via emails, we have specific rules we need to follow. So the recipient of the message must be an individual. So you can't send the message to a group because otherwise you wouldn't know who replies to it. Also, the recipient must be visible on the message. So you can't do a mass mailing for that. Don't put them in the BCC field. And also, it's cloud only. Those people who know me, it's always cloud only. So Exchange Online or Outlook.com.
So sending such an adaptive card, let's see how this works. Of course, we can do this with code, and you can send it via SMTP. And this is what I'm going to show you now. There are links behind that. If you're a developer, you can follow that. I want to show you something, how you can do it as a non-developer by using logic apps or flows. So what do we do here? Well, we create a flow and we're using the graph to send such an actionable message, and we want to react to that. So let's see how we can do that. So we saw the actionable message designer, or actually I think it was here, where we can send ourselves such an adaptive card. So if we want to send that, we can do this with a flow, for example. So I've opened here my Azure subscription. You can do it with Power Automate with a flow, or I did it here with Azure Logic Apps, which is more or less the same, but offers a little bit more possibilities. So the first thing, when you want to send such an actionable message as a part of a business process, you would create such a flow. And here's a very simple sample. How can you do that? Well, you can have a trigger like here. Say, when I run this trigger, when I do a post against this one, then please send a message. And we can send a message with various methods. So the best method, if it's a business process, you do it from a kind of service mailbox or so, and we can do it with Microsoft Graph. And you can see here, this is how we can send such an email message, and this is just how a message must look like. So the message must include a body, what's part of that message. It must have a recipient, which is in that case my email address, and then we do an HTTP post against that endpoint. So just to show you that quickly, you can try it out as well. You go to AKMS-GE here. That's the Graph Explorer. So where I can try it out. And I simply take that content here from my Logic app here. So I simply paste that here, go to the Graphic Explorer, and this is my playground. So I can say, give me information about me. I'm logged in with that demo account. And you can see I get back the information about my user account. So I can do the same thing so that you see how it looks like. I do a post and I simply copy the URL here, which is send mail. So I go here and say that's me/send mail. And the only thing which I need to have here is the permission, so that with that user account, I'm allowed to send an email. In that case, let's try it out. I run this graph query and I get back HTTP 202, which means, okay, it was successful. I didn't get a response, but if I look now at my Outlook mailbox, it should come this message which I just sent here. So I will use the correct email address. I simply copied it from here, and I hope I have the permission here. Yeah, I already have it consented. So let's try again. Maybe it takes a moment. It says again, now it is here. So if I go to the inbox, I would see it. Okay, here's the message I just sent from the Graph Explorer. And this is exactly what this Logic app here does. So that's the basic for sending an email from a service. Of course, I need to have permission to send from that mailbox. In my case, I have a parameter here and say the sender for that email is, in my case, this account here. So this works very well. What I need to do, if I do it from a business process, I need to authenticate against that endpoint. And you can do this with various methods here. And I've used the simplest method here. I say, okay, I authenticate with Microsoft Azure Active Directory. I'm using OAuth, which means I need to add an authority. I need to add a tenant. I would say I want to access Microsoft Graph. And this is an application and a secret that allows me to do so. So what I did here in the background, so let me go to another browser here to have some more tabs open. Simply go to this application here. So I copy that here, that you see what I've done with the application so that I'm allowed to do that. So go to Azure Active Directory and go to the applications here, app registrations. And here I should find that application which I created. In that case, it's called Mac2 app. That's the application. And this must be registered. And what I did here, first of all, I added a secret, which is the password here, the graph send secret here. And I added a permission. And if I look at the permissions, you can see what this application is allowed to do in my Office 365 tenant. So for example, this application allows to read the calendar, to read directory, to read groups, to write groups. And this is important, it gives me the permission to send an email. So this is what this application really needs to be able to send such a message. Okay, with that, that's the first part. Now we know how we can send a message. Let's go back And let's go to a business use case. How can we create such a use case here? So I go back to my resource group, and you can see we have a send approval. So this is the simplest way how you can send an approval email with Microsoft Graph or with a connector. If I look at that here, we will see that this logic app here hopefully shows me the content. Here we go. And we have a ready-to-use action. So this is perfect for simple use cases. We don't need to have Graph. We don't need to have an application, but we can use the connector here. This is a ready-to-use connector, which authenticates with a user. You can see it here, currently connected to my account here, which means that's more or less the basic of every Azure Logic app, that every connector, and the flows, of course, every connector authenticates as the user. So the user can have MFA in place. The user simply has to confirm this one time, and then he can configure and say, okay, I send an email to this one, to this user, and these are my 2 or 3 options, for example, and I want to send an approval. Just if you want to do it from scratch here, search for send, go to Outlook, go to the Outlook connector, which is Office 365 Outlook here. And here we see in one of the actions here is send an email, send an approval email. This is exactly what I've done. Then you automatically get in this connector approve, reject, and approval request. And of course, you need to connect with a mailbox. And this is what I've done in this step here. And I've done some more things. I said, I want to create a case ID, which is simply a random number, a GUID. I say, I send an approval request for this business case, for this ticket, whatever it might be. And I say, I have 3 options here. And this is important because this defines how the card looks like in your Outlook inbox, which means, do I have Outlook as a client, which knows how to handle the adaptive card or the actionable message, or do I have eventually a client that doesn't understand actionable messages? Then I should include the HTML email as well, which is automatically read by this connector here. And in the end, I simply ask, okay, what is the result for that here? And it seems I forgot the result here somewhere. It has been deleted. So I need to say, what happens with the selection option? The selected option is approve or reject or unknown, the 3 options I've given here. And depending on the situation, I say, okay, it's approved, and send an email, hey, this is approved, or I send an email if it's one of the other 2 options, which is reject or unknown. I send an email, it's denied. Okay, let's save this and simply run this very simple actionable message. And when this flow here runs, which I now started manually, you will see I got an email here. In the first tab here, there's a notification. I'm currently here at the send approval email. So let's go here and see how this out-of-the-box approval looks like. And this is what you get here. I have a subject, I have a content approval request for a specific ticket or whatever it is, and I can say I approve it. And what I should get back are 2 things. First, I see the action is completed. So the adaptive card, the actionable message changes automatically because the connector knows how to react to that. And the second thing, I'm continuing within the flow here. And if I go to the flow, you see I got an approved email, which is this case here. So we sent that email to that mailbox. It has been approved. Perfect. Just to show the other method here, I run this again here. I go to my emails. I just got the second email. I now say, oh, it's unknown. The third case, I simply don't know what to do with this ticket, with this request here. It says, again, thank you for the connection. And in that case, I get the second email, which says, okay, sorry, this request is denied. So that's the simplest form how you can do these approval emails. I think that's very useful for many use cases. What about if you want to create your own actionable messages, what Martina showed at the beginning, because this is a predefined method. Again, I'll run it just to show you again. You don't have an adaptive card or an actionable message where you can say, I want to include pictures, or I want to have other options, or it shall depend if the user opens a button, then I need to comment on in another text box or something like this. So how can you build your own processes? And now comes the second part, or actually the third demo here, which is sending your own actionable message. And for this, we have an extra flow here. Let me show you what this flow does. It does not use the ready-to-use connector. In that case, we are sending our own card. So basically, we are now using the Microsoft Graph application with the same method what we saw before in the first step here, where we say we send an email from this mailbox, and the body here is our actionable message, which we can define as we want it. And for authentication here, we could use our user, or we can use a managed identity, which need to have the permission for that. So that's more or less a matter of security or something like this. So we will talk more about this in our next session, which is in the next hour. We will talk extensively about securing your applications. So in this case, I'm authenticated with the managed identity, and we say we send an email address. And here I have some parameters. So first of all, I have a postback URL, which says if the user gets the message card, I want to have a decision. Which menu does the user want to have for lunch, for example? What should I do with the postback? What should I do with the data? I want to do something with the data. I want to store it. I want to refund the user. I want to change the card. So this is what the sample here does. So I have a postback URL, which I will show you a little bit later. So this is the address that comes in place when we click on a menu. Then we say, okay, to which user do we want to send that card? In my case, I simply used my own email address. And here I say, who is the sender of that email? In my case, it's also my own email account. In reality, it would be a service account, some kind of shared mailbox or something like this. So that's the basic part. The important thing here is, how do we construct that actionable message? Actually, it's in here. We say we have a JSON, and this is now I paste that here into my designer, into this here, so that you can see how this card has been created. And this is what we saw before in Martina's demo. In the Viva Connections dashboard, we see how this card looks like. So how does it work? Well, we have, first of all, an adaptive card. It's a version that Outlook understands. We have the speak option here if you're using a screen reader or so. And we have a text block and so on. And then we have an image set, which are these 3 images. And you can see these images here. I open my Storage Explorer in the meantime, are coming from a public blob storage. So this is where this comes from. So I have 3 images, 3 menus, like schnitzel, pasta, and vegan, for example. And of course, these images must be reachable. So every client that shows that card must have access to that storage where these images or whatever it is show that quickly. So I simply take that here, the schnitzel address, and I go to my browser. And you will see that if I open that here, I get the picture of the schnitzel. So this must be a requirement for us so that the card can be rendered correctly. And I've opened my browser here, my Storage Explorer, to show you the Demo 22 account here. And in this storage account, it's a public Azure storage account, or better, a storage account with here a blob container that has public access. And here in this images folder, we have these files, and I have them doubled because we had a caching issue. We changed the pictures, so but you see where these pictures come from. And what else do I have here? I have a table, and that table includes messages with the result of what the user selects, because I want to do something with that data here. So we come to that a little bit later. So currently we have 28 items stored in here. So this is how this card looks like. Let's go back to our flow here. What else do I need? Well, I need to include that actionable message in the header of an email, what we saw before in the slide. So this is more or less the email itself. And you can see here I have the script type. This is the header. Here's the script type with application type adaptive card plus JSON. And I will replace this here by the content of this action here, of this variable below. And then I send an HTML message as well, if that cannot be rendered. Okay, what's else in here? Here we have the body, what I need to send to the graph, what we've seen in the Graph Explorer. So this is more or less the message itself, which I post to Microsoft Graph as an email. And then I do the same what I did in the other flow. I create a new case ID, request ID, however we call it, to identify that use case here. And what else do we do here? We using that storage account, which I just opened, and I say, well, there's a table of messages in that, and please add that request, that that business case into that table so that I can do something with that data. But currently the user hasn't clicked on any menu. So I say menu is 0. It's not defined right now. So that I know I sent the user an email, but the user has not selected, so that I afterwards can also open a Power BI, for example, and do something with that data. By mentioning that here, let me do that in the meantime, because Power BI needs some time to open. Okay, and in the end, I say, now I'm done. I really send out that adaptive card. So let's try it out. I simply run the trigger. Since this is a menu choice, it would recur eventually daily or so, every day at a specific time or so. In my case, I leave it with month, and I say run this trigger now. So we want to send out the menu to specific users. In my case, to my own email account, to my own email inbox. So this is now running, and actually you can see the green check marks. Everything went well, and this is the email we just sent out. And this magic, what we are doing here is we need to replace the adaptive card here with this / quote so that it works, so that the format of the send mail graph connector knows what to do with that. We should have gotten an email here, so which is this one, and now we see Toni developer got an email with an adaptive card, with special requests, with the 3 buttons, what we saw, what we defined in the designer. So now the user can say, okay, I want to have a specific menu here for today, and I want to have this one here, and I want to have spicy, for example. And then I say, I select this or that option here. So what would you expect from a user perspective when I select something from that card? Well, exactly what we've seen before with the approval workflow. I don't want the user gets the same card and can vote or can say, click on the menu 3 times or 10 times. When the user makes a decision, I want that this adaptive card changes. So let's see what happens here. So I select the spicy vegan menu and I click on that menu here. And now we are contacting our next logic app, and that takes that content, takes that order, writes it to the database, in our case to the table, and sends back another card which says, oh, thank you, you selected this menu. And you can see I no longer can select what one of the options because it's done. The approval process is over. And this is exactly what this ready-to-use flow here did, where once I click on something here like reject, for example, you can see action is over. In that case, I get an email back which says, okay, this is denied, and the same goes here. So this is very, very important for most use cases, whether if it's an approval process or something different, to have a kind of user interaction and to react on that and to make another reaction not possible. Okay, so this logic app here is done. We have another logic app. If I go back to my resource group, another flow here, which is this one. And this is exactly the endpoint that takes that result here. If I click on edit, you will see that's an HTTP trigger with that address here. And this is what we used in the adaptive card. Please post the result back to this URL. And what are we doing here? We say, okay, by default, we say the user selected schnitzel. We want to show him or her an image here. In my case, you see I selected the vegan food, so I get the graphics for the vegan food and my comment here. And what else do we have here? Then we switch and say, depending on what came back here, we say, hey, the menu that has been selected can be 1, 2, or 3 here. And here we simply say, hey, if it's 2, then please change the image URL to pasta or change it to vegan. In my case, it went to vegan, or the default would be maybe schnitzel or so. Then we say, okay, we want to send back a card. And again, here we create a new card, or we created a new card. So let me simply take that here and go to the designer so that you have an idea how this looks like in the designer. This is more or less, it doesn't understand these flow expressions here, but you get the idea here because the image here just says, show me a variable with a specific URL. In my case, of course, it would be the schnitzel or whatever it is coming from that storage account here. So this is now my JSON message, which I sent back, the card I sent back. And then we write the result to our table here. Remember, we had 28 results here. I can simply open the storage browser, 28 cached items. If I click refresh, we should now get 29 cached items. And we see the latest request. If we sort for timestamp descending, you see this is what I sent back. On this day, today, with the current time, spicy menu 3, for example. And we have a lot of sent out menus which have not been decided, obviously. Okay, so here we write it to a database, and then we send back, okay, this is the new payload which has been selected. And this is exactly how this works. If you want to use that kind of mechanism, that kind of actionable messages with your own actionable messages, and if you want to have other business processes, you can do this here with such flows. I want to show you one last demo here, the send teams here, which is also a ready-to-use connector. You can not only send an adaptive card to Outlook or use it in Viva connections. There's a ready-to-use connector where you can send it to Teams. And the benefit here, again, you see an adaptive card in here with the same menu here. And the benefit here is we can react on that, what's happening in that card. So let me show you that. So I run this flow here, and I go now to Teams here. And I post this message here to my team company general. So here we go. So this is the card we just sent here. What would you like to order today with an order ID, for example? Again, we have special requests, and now I order the schnitzel. And you will see the same thing happens. So the card is changed. Again, if 2 or 5 users would look into that team and the first user decides, hey, I want to have schnitzel, for example, then the selection is made. So the others will see exactly what I see here. Thanks for your order. This process has already been approved. If you want to send an approval mail or an approval to 5 users, you need to send out best case to the user itself in Teams or email. Okay, so this is more or less the Teams thing. And we have here the confirmation where we say, okay, thanks for your order. We take that menu here. And then again, we write that data to the database. So what happened here, I selected in Teams, and I get back an email in that case, which I can define what shall happen with the user does this action here. And here we have you selected menu 1. Okay, with this, I think, or I hope you have a nice overview how this process can look like. Maybe just at an end here, I want to show you what we can do something with the data here. So we collected all the data here in that table here with the menus. There are currently 29 orders in here. So if I click here on refresh, I'm using that Azure table here. I'm connecting directly against that table storage. And you can see there are now 30 rows obviously loaded. And this would be the result. So I can see what has been ordered today, for example. So that's interactive. That's very nice here. So I can do something with that data here. Okay.
So that means we can wrap up briefly. So what we showed you today is we can connect everything with everything. And Toni showed it with an Azure storage. It could also be a SharePoint list. So it depends on what you are deciding here. We also collected all of the links that you can start, build your own actionable messages and also your adaptive cards. And we have the sample available right now on the GitHub of Toni. We can reproduce that, and we will probably also write a blog post about that you can see, which is kind of a walkthrough in the session. So hopefully you liked it today. I think it was a brief walk through everything. And if there are questions left, just let us know.
So let's see if there are some questions.
And we would like to have feedback. Anyone?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Donald, for your question, which is, can you clarify the relationship between adaptive cards and actionable messages? Yes, so actionable messages are a part of the adaptive cards, which means some clients know what to do if you add, for example, in the design a submit button or HTTP open URL. So actionable messages are just a part of adaptive cards. I hope this clarifies it a little bit, and it depends on the client what the client can do. So, for example, the Viva connections can only do an action submit, and for example, Outlook only understands an HTTP open. There's a concept that's called universal adaptive cards or universal actions, which means you can say action.execute, but not all clients currently understand that format. That's coming with message exchange or adaptive cards format 1.4, which means not every client currently understands it, but Microsoft is working on that. So again, actionable message is just another name for a subset of adaptive cards.
Yeah. And that being said, thank you for everything and thanks for attending the session. We have 2 more sessions to go today. So if you want, you can meet us again at the hour where we will show how we can use Exchange Online in an app at scale, and hope you liked it. Please provide us some feedback, what we can do better or what is missing here. And we are happy to connect. The best way is follow us on Twitter or send us an email if you want. I would be happy to answer them. So thank you.
Thank you. And just because I saw it in the chat, when you say Outlook, which versions do you mean? You saw I worked with Outlook for the web, but the same is true for the Outlook desktop client, so the latest version.
Okay. Thanks all.
Thank you. Hope to see you in the next session.
Bye-bye.